Hello my crochet friends, it's Yobi here today, and in this video I'm sharing with you everything related to triple or also called treble crochet. This is the name of the stitch in US, and in UK, Australia and India that's called double treble crochet. For this stitch, you can use a foundation chain with any number of chains. In written pattern, this stitch is going to be referred as TR if the written pattern uses an American terms, and in case the written pattern uses a UK or Australian or Indian terms, this stitch is going to be referred as DTR. If you are checking a crochet chart, this stitch is going to be referred with this symbol. It is like a T that is crossed with two little lines. Now I will explain you the pattern we are working on in this tutorial. So here you can see our pattern. And in this case, I'm using as a foundation chain 10 chains. This is just an example. With the arrow, it is marked the beginning of the chain, and you can visualize this like the loose end of the yarn after the slip knot that you make at the beginning. So here we have 10 chains of the foundation chain, and we are going to make in the first row 10 triple crochet. At the beginning of the row, the first triple crochet is going to be replaced by the turning chain. In the case of the triple crochet, the turning chain is formed by 4 chains, as you can see here, colored in blue. As I have mentioned before, in this case, this turning chain counts as 1 triple crochet. Okay, this is a replacement, so it should be counted. So in the case of row patterns, we are going to read the foundation chain from the left to the right, so in this direction, and the first row we read from right to left, so in this direction. Now we are going to start working with the 10 chains of our foundation chain plus 4 chains that correspond to the turning chain. So here I have the 10 chains of my foundation chain plus 4 chains of the turning chain. We are going to begin working the first row, and as you can see here, this has to be worked on the 6th chain. Why on the 6th? Because we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 that correspond to the turning chain. Then the 5th chain corresponds to the base chain of this turning chain. So we start working the triple crochet on the 6th chain. As I have mentioned before, we are going to make the triple crochet on the 6th chain. So first we are going to count from the hook down. We don't count this working loop. We start here. This is first, second, third, and fourth. Okay, so they correspond to the turning chain. This is the 5th chain. This is the base chain. So here in this chain is where we start working our triple crochet. Okay, so the first thing what we are going to do is to rest the chain on our middle finger. This is going to give us a sort of comfort, and we are able to work on the foundation chain in an easier way. My thumb is going to be placed very close to the stitch where I'm working. So as you can see here. For the triple crochet, we are going to begin yarning over twice. That's 1 and 2. Then with my middle finger of the dominant hand, I'm holding these loops on my hook. Then here I introduce the hook through the loop to the front loop of the 6th chain. Okay, then in this position I yarn over and I'm going to come out through this gap, and here I'm going to pull the loop so that the loop has a height of 2 chains approximately. Now I have 4 loops on my chain. Okay, then I'm going to yarn over and pull the loop of the yarn over through the first 2 loops on my hook. Then I have now 3 loops on my hook. I yarn over and pull it through the next 2 loops. Now I have 2 loops on the hook, then yarn over once more and pull this loop of the yarn over through the last 2 loops. And now our triple crochet is ready. This is our second stitch in this row, because here we have the turning chain that counts as the first stitch, and this is the second one. So I would recommend you to use a stitch marker to mark the beginning and the end of the row so that you don't miss these stitches. If you don't have a stitch marker, you can use a bobby pin or any other thing that can be used to mark something, so that you basically can hang a little bit. So now I'm going to continue with the next triple crochet in the next chain of my foundation chain. Again, I yarn over twice. With my middle finger, I'm going to put this loop together and hold this. Now in this position, I introduce the hook through the next chain, so here. Then I yarn over and come out through this gap, and I pull this loop up to the height of 2 chains, like so. Then I yarn over and pull it through the first 2 loops, then yarn over again, pull it through the next 2 loops, and yarn over again and pull it through the last 2 loops. And now my third stitch is ready, as you can see here. I'm going to continue working until the end of this row. So here I'm almost at the end of this row, and be careful and pay attention that you do not forget to make the stitch in the last chain. For that, we find the position of our slip knot, that it is here, and then we verify that we have worked the corresponding stitch in the last chain. So here I still miss to work the last triple crochet. Now my first row of triple crochet is ready. So what I have to do is a good practice to count the number of stitches that we have in the row. We should have the same number of stitches than the number of chains that we made in our foundation chain. So when we see this V shape here, this corresponds to one stitch. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So the row is complete. So now I'm here, that it is at the end of the first row, and I'm going to read my pattern for the second row. The second row, we read it from left to right, like this. And the first thing that I encounter here is these 4 chains that correspond to the turning chain. And then I start working triple crochet, this triple crochet on top of the triple crochet of the previous row. Notice that in the first triple crochet, that is going to be the last triple crochet of this row, because we were coming from here to here, this is the base stitch of our turning chain. So here we just work the turning chain, and then we move to the next stitch, and on top of this we work a triple crochet. So now I will continue with the second row. I will make the turning chain, then I'm going to turn my work in this direction, and if we observe here, this, the one that I'm pointing, this is the last triple crochet of the row number 1. So this is the base stitch of my turning chain. I don't work here, I'm going to work here, that is the next stitch. Where do you introduce your hook? Well, you have a look here that there is these little gaps. This gap corresponds to this stitch, and this gap corresponds to this stitch. So here, through this gap, is where I'm going to introduce my hook. Notice again that this gap is resting on my middle finger of the non-dominant hand, and my thumb is located very close to the place where I'm going to introduce my hook. So here I yarn over twice, then I introduce my hook through here, I yarn over and come out through this gap. Okay, I'm going to pull this loop until it reaches a height of 2 chains approximately. Then I have 4 loops on my hook. Here I yarn over and pull this through the first 2 loops. Now I have 3 loops on my hook, then yarn over and pull it through the next 2 loops, and finally yarn over and pull this through the last 2 loops. Okay, so now that's the second stitch of the second row, and if you are a total beginner, please place here the stitch marker on the 4th row of the turning chain. In this case, I'm not going to place the stitch marker, so I can show you how this stitch looks like, and maybe you can identify this afterwards. I'm just going to continue until the end of the row and then show you how we do in the last stitch. Now I'm at the end of this row, so for making the last stitch I'm going to remove the stitch marker, okay, and in this position I just want to show you where we are going to introduce the hook. So the stitch marker was placed here, okay, so that was where the stitch marker was, and if you observe, it is formed a kind of a 6 number, okay, this little loop. So I'm going to introduce my hook behind this loop here, okay, that's the position for my hook, okay. So now I'm just going to yarn over twice, then introduce the hook under this loop, then yarn over, come out through this gap, then pull the loop with the size of 2 chains and yarn over, pull this through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops, and yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. And now our second row is ready. So now we are here, we are at the end of this row. We were coming from here to here, and then for the next row we are going to read from right to left, okay. So then the first thing that we encounter, since it is a new row, is the turning chain that replaces the triple crochet, and the next are just triple crochet, okay. This is what we are going to work now. So now for the third row we begin with the turning chain that is formed with 4 chains, okay. Then I turn my work, and here again I have to see where do I introduce my hook. So this one is the last stitch of my previous row and is the base stitch of the turning chain, so I don't work here. I'm going to work here in the next stitch. So here I yarn over twice, introduce my hook through this gap, then yarn over and come out through the gap, pull this a little bit the loop so it has the right height, then I yarn over, pull this through the first 2 loops, yarn over, pull it through the next 2 loops, so here we yarn over, pull it through the next 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull this through the last 2 loops. And now the second stitch of my third row is ready. I'm going to continue working almost until the end of the row so I can show you how do we proceed here. So here I'm almost at the end of this row, okay. 2 stitches are missing. Here I miss the stitch on top of this triple crochet of the previous row. So I'm just checking here, and here I encounter this V shape. So I'm going to work the corresponding triple crochet here. I introduce my hook through here, and always check that I'm taking the 2 parts of the stitch, okay. The movement, we know it already. And here in the last stitch I have to see where should I introduce my hook. As you can see, with the stitch marker has been easier, but without a stitch marker, what you have to do is to try to identify this loop or this 6 that we have seen. If you observe here, this is the loop, okay? This is where the 6 is located. So we are going to introduce the hook behind this loop here. Okay? So I hope you can see it. So now let's introduce the hook through this. If, just as a small trick, if you consider that maybe your hook is not introduced here easily, that's normal because chains are smaller stitches. What you can do is to change your hook, take it in a smaller hook, okay? Then do the same procedure and introduce your hook easily. Okay? And just you continue working as usual. Okay? So here you change again to your working hook. And now our third row is ready. So here I have added an extra row so you can see better the texture of this stitch. I will recommend you continue adding some rows more so you get used to this stitch and your hand get used to control the tension. And that's all what I have for you, my friends. If you enjoyed this video and you have learned something new, please give a like to the video, leave me a comment down below because I love reading your comments, and if you have any question, get in touch with me as soon as possible. I wish you a very nice day and I thank you again for being here. Bye!